a lot of these border towns in Mexico have, curfews, or the mothers will all take their children inside because you have people coming from Haiti and the Middle East and further south in South America, and they don't want to travel that far with a child. It doesn't logically make sense to go that distance. So what they do is they'll grab a child at the border, someone who is a toddler or a baby who can't speak for themselves, or they're actually medicating them with Zoloft.
This is Christian Gomez with the New American Magazine, and today we're discussing the border crisis and the invasion that's happening in our southern border. And joining us today to discuss this is our JBS Field Coordinator for Eastern Texas, and even all the way down to the U.S.-Mexico border, Heather Hobbs. Heather, thank you for joining us again at the New American.
Thanks for having me, Christian.
So as the coordinator who covers Eastern Texas, including parts of the U.S.-Mexico border, you've had the opportunity to go down there and see with your own eyes what's actually happening. Could you tell us what you've seen and what you've heard from Border Patrol agents that you've spoken with?
Absolutely. So there is a true invasion. Every single time I've ever been down to the border, there are literally people coming across every hour, every moment. It's nonstop. It's relentless. And in fact, I saw a video this morning where the border agents are ordered by the federal government. They're just opening the fences where there are fences. But there are large portions of our border that are just completely open. There's big gaps in the wall. There's just so much where people can just come right across. And because of this, I've had a passion for a lot of our border agents and our Texas Rangers and troopers, because they're the ones being left to deal with this. They're the ones that are seeing the human trafficking. They're finding the children and women dead in the desert. They are finding these horrific, terrible things. And sadly, because of this, the suicide rate is so high that they've now called in a suicidologist.
Now, when Trump was president, the mainstream media made a huge big deal, you could say, about the children being separated from their parents, being put in cages, how inhumane this was. And so when Biden was sworn in, one of the first things he did as president with regards to the border crisis was to change the policy, supposedly under the banner of keeping families together, children with their parents. But whatever good intentions there may have been in that policy, it's certainly facilitating more human trafficking, actually, correct? Can you tell us about what's happening now?
That's 100% correct. Yes, the trafficking has went up. There's so many figures. I've seen 600%, I've seen 800%. Everybody has their own numbers. But the trafficking instantly increased and has rapidly and continually grown since then. The current policy that was implemented by the Biden administration says that if you have a minor child with you, when you get to our southern border, you get to be released within 72 hours from Border Patrol agents. You get a court date. You have the opportunity to go to the court date if you want, but typically my border agents say it's 6 to 8 months out, and there's really no accountability. So if you have a child with you, you're released into the country.
But some of these children, or maybe perhaps most of the children, I'm not sure about the actual figures, but there's a good number of those children that are not even related to the individuals crossing with them.
Yes.
Can you tell us about how these children are being picked up and exploited, and who's doing so and why?
So there's various ways that the children are being exploited. I have social media managers for my page who actually live in Mexico, and they have told me that a lot of these border towns in Mexico have curfews, or the mothers will all take their children inside because you have people coming from Haiti and the Middle East and further south in South America, and they don't want to travel that far with a child. It doesn't logically make sense to go that distance. So what they do is they'll grab a child at the border, someone who is a toddler or a baby who can't speak for themselves, or they're actually medicating them with Zoloft and to keep them timid so that they're not misbehaving at the border. And so if they have a child with them and they get caught, they can say, this is my child, especially if they're younger. They don't have the opportunity to speak for themselves. However, there's also a lot of young men who have said that they're 15, 16, 17, and they're actually in their mid-20s. So there's that side of things. And then also, of course, there's the cartels who have children that you can buy already there that you can use to get back and forth.
And reuse them, the same ones.
Reuse them over and over again, and again, keeping them medicated so they're docile. It's a tragic, inhumane crisis that we have. And this is what our border agents and rangers and police, that's what they're seeing.
So when these toddlers, babies, and young children are kidnapped from Mexico, innocent children have nothing to do with anything, living peaceably in their own country in Mexico, and they're snatched. They're basically being snatched by these coyotes and cartels and other illegals as an insurance policy if they get caught. What happens if they don't get caught and they still have these children? What do they do with them typically?
Unfortunately, what our agents and police are seeing is they're finding a lot of dead people, a lot of dead children. And if you don't get caught, what do you need to provide for a child for?
Especially if it's not your child.
Exactly.
You mentioned people coming in from like the Middle East.
Yes.
So you were telling me before how the Border Patrol agents have been capturing people who are members of ISIS even.
Yes, they're finding many terrorists posing as Hispanics and coming in and across, and then they'll run the database, and they've caught, I believe, 40-some ISIS terrorists, and that's
within
just
the
the
last
ones.
year,
Yes, that's just the ones that are caught, though. That's the thing. We have such, and it's no fault to our officers and agents, but we have so many great numbers of people that get across that we don't know where they go. We don't know what they do because our borders are open, unfortunately. And now we also have the policies and rules that are keeping our agents occupied in paperwork and other things instead of out there doing their job that they want to do. I can't tell you how many of these agents I've personally spoken to who bear their heart to me that they hate what they're doing. And that's, again, why the suicide rate is so high. They don't want to see these women and children suffering. They don't want to, see that they're being abused and victimized. It's so tragic, and it should not be happening on American soil. It shouldn't happen anywhere, but especially in a place where we say that we are free people.
Yeah, and speaking about suicide, you've mentioned to me how there's a high suicide rate among the Border Patrol agents and even National Guard that are there at the border. Can you discuss that? I think you even know some people, some actual
Yes.
officers that have taken their own lives.
Yes, so I've had 3 that I know of personally in the last, 6 months or so that have taken their own life. And that has come from being a field coordinator, going around talking to people and getting to know them. But they are the National Guard. So what we have is the Texas National Guard is being ordered by Governor Abbott to close the borders, and then the federal government is telling Border Patrol to open it. And so they're kind of going back and forth, and they don't want to be against each other. They want to work together, but they're being given different orders, different directives. And so, yes, the National Guard has been having suicides as well. Reason being is they're seeing the same horrific things that the Border Patrol are, just like our Texas Rangers or the police. We also have a big issue of cartels dumping bodies on our side of the border, especially where we have good sheriffs. And what that does is, I believe they said it's about $30,000 or so, depending on where you live, to take the body, to be able to process it, to do an autopsy, and then to do the burial. That is a huge expense on the tax dollars. And so what it does is it depletes the police funds and the department funds and the city funds. And that makes it even harder to protect the borders because now you don't have the money to do so. So the cartels are putting people on our side of the border intentionally to cause a budget crisis.
That's essentially, when one uses the word invasion, they often think about a military invasion.
Yes.
And this is a military invasion. It may not be the Mexican army. They're not the ones that we're dealing with here, but these cartels are armed to the teeth, and they're intentionally, as one of their tactics and strategies, like you said, dumping bodies of people they've killed in Mexico into the counties where there's constitutional sheriffs and good police captains and so forth to deplete those funds. Meanwhile, there are other counties that have sheriffs and police departments that are actually working with the cartels, actually.
Yes. There are several that I know of for a fact that are, and Border Patrol knows that they're doing it. The National Guard knows that they're doing it, but they're very intelligent. A lot of people think of these cartels as thugs that you see on TV, but they have got people from Harvard and Yale running their finances. They're funded by China. China bought 144,000 Texas acres last year, and one of those that was at the border of Texas, and it has an airstrip. So we have China involved too. China and the cartels work together hand in hand, and the whole objective is to destroy Americanism and to take over.
Now, there are some signs posted along the border in English and in Spanish where an individual could find water to survive if they're crossing the border. illegally. But some of those signs, at least a few of them, are actually written also in Mandarin. So from your conversations with the Border Patrol, do you know if they're encountering illegal Chinese posing as Spanish
Yes.
individuals?
Well, not even posing as Spanish. We have ample Chinese coming through. My friend, Dr. Dana Myers, she's running for some sort of position, but she's a surgeon out of Houston, and she has encountered many Asians who have been trafficked and been given surgeries to put drugs in their body and then sent across the border, young teenage girls that she's operated on to save their lives, and she said that they were Chinese. So we do see a lot of that as well.
Wow. And regarding the wave of immigrants that are coming here, a lot of times people may picture it as a mother or a young man with his little brothers or children just running across the border, holding hands like in those traffic signs. But that's not really the picture that you're seeing down there. You're seeing men in their 20s, fighting age, healthy, ample men, and you even recorded some footage.
So what we have is we are at the border, which is totally open. There's not Border Patrol agents in this location at that time. I had some friends there, and the bus is coming across with no checks, no supervision, no escort, nothing. And it just comes right across, and it's filled with only men, young men. And this was really disturbing to me because the Biden administration, they paint this picture of these families simply trying to get a better life. And there are, in fact, families coming. I was told by Border Patrol that there's a specific spot where the families come through. And that is the spot that they know they're not going to have contention or problems. And it's in the river, and it has a big light right there. And so that's where they actually get the women, children, families, husbands, brothers that we're talking about. But there's statistics of 80 to 90%, depending on which study that you look at, that say 80 to 90% are fighting age males. There is the families coming is the minority.
Yeah, I would imagine that for a lot of those illegal families that want to come here for the right reason, even though they're doing it the wrong way, not doing it legally, it's unsafe even for them. So they probably go to an area that they know is a little safer for them because the cartels control most, if not the vast majority of all the routes to enter into the U.S. where there's no wall and there's gaps, or where they have to open the fences, like you were discussing earlier with me.
Yes.
Now, there's also a huge drug problem that's coming across the border. Like you mentioned to me before this program, fentanyl. Can you describe what's happening specifically with the fentanyl that's coming into the U.S. and how it's coming from Mexico?
With the friends that I have in the work that I do, the fentanyl crisis, we believe, is likely to be the next big terror attack, or a big terror attack in our near future, because they can weaponize it. They can use it they can put it in the air, they can put it in the water, and it's lethal. It's very deadly. But we have had a massive influx of fentanyl coming into the country, especially the last several months. As you know, our dear friend Rebecca Kiesling, a pro-life activist, her sons last year died of fentanyl. They were at a party, and they're teenage boys, and that's what's happening. They're intentionally killing our children. And, the fentanyl right now, it actually looks like candy. It looks like little Pez's or, little Skittles. They're making it look like candy. So I've told my own children, if we're at a grocery store and you see that little piece of candy on the floor, do not eat it. The fentanyl is so bad right now that we've had police and border agents who don't realize that they'll touch a surface. That's why they're now wearing gloves. They can touch a trunk or put their hand in something and die instantly from the skin absorption. So that is, again, another attack on America, and it's being funded by China. The cartels get a lot of the ingredients from China.
Now, as a coordinator for the John Birch Society down there, what are you and another JBS members doing to try to address this border crisis and even support the Border Patrol agents?
So we are actually working to form a Border Patrol committee similar to the Support Our Police program that we have. We have had many events down at the border to raise awareness, to get people activated, to recruit members and educate, to go to our sheriffs in every county and educate them on their duties to be a constitutional sheriff, explaining to them that their power supersedes the federal government, that it's their duty to protect their citizens and to make sure their town is safe. We've been working with the police. We've been working by basically trying to merge the gap between these different organizations and bring some unity, as well as getting to the Capitol to make sure we're holding the politicians accountable, because that is where a lot of people fall short. They don't want to go all the way to the Capitol. But in these times, we don't have an option anymore. We have to get there. We have to make sure they're doing what they're elected to do.
Heather, thank you so much for being with us here today and for sharing this information with us. And for those of you that are watching, we recommend that you visit jbs.org to learn more information about how you can get involved. And if you're living down in Texas specifically, or any of the border states, consider joining up or forming, if there isn't one in your state, like if you're in Arizona, for example, one of these ad hoc committees to support the Border Patrol agents, as Heather Hobbs is doing with JBS members in Texas. So thank you, and take care, and God bless.